That is some good stuff. Where it's not about any one of us. It can't be about any one of us. It has to be about the community because light doesn't degrade. Light keeps going, and our individual selves will stop at some point,
Oh,
but the
yeah.
community will continue on. So long as we don't build the community all around one individual, which
Of course
happens
we
all too
do
easily.
that. Oh my gosh, we do that all the time.
Hi everyone, I'm Reverend Jim Keat, Riverside's digital minister.
And I'm Reverend Adriene Thorne, Riverside Senior Minister. And this is the Word Made Fresh.
The Word Made Fresh is a weekly video Bible study sermon prep resource to help you explore this book we love in all the ways we love to explore and expound on it. If you're leading a sermon, a Bible study, or just like to learn this stuff, this is the video for you. We talk about narrative lectionary texts, and the one for this coming Sunday, December 11th, is from Isaiah chapter 42, verses 1 through 9. The title in my Bible here says, The Servant, a Light to the Nations. Reverend Thorne, what is happening in this text from Isaiah, and how are you kind of approaching it for the sermon that you're cooking for that Sunday?
Well, what's interesting is that our pageant is happening that Sunday, so I won't actually get to preach this text, which is kind of a bummer because this notion of light, I think, is such a powerful one for Christians. What I also find interesting is that we often take these Isaiah texts and use them to point towards Jesus, which isn't horrible, but I always hear Dr. Jeffrey Kwan, who is my Hebrew Bible professor, in my head saying, don't do that. That these texts stand on their own. And so it is a really interesting exercise to wrestle with this without making the bridge or the jump to Jesus. So what does it mean for the people that Isaiah is speaking to, that there is a servant, that there is a light? I think it invites them more to think about themselves and those they're in community with, um, in a different way than we might when it shows up for Jesus in the Gospel of Luke.
My research on this extends to reading the footnotes in my HarperCollins Study Bible, which is always a good place to start your research, but it clearly points out that this text can be interpreted in two ways. One is that the servant is an individual, or, and this is where the HarperCollins Study Bible lands, that the servant represents Israel. The people were called to be this servant and to embody this light to the nations, which I really like that direction. That just feels like it lets us continue that trajectory of being those people from whom light is brought to the nations and the world and all creation around us.
It's a beautiful sentiment, and I think in some cultures outside of the United States of America, they might fall into that a little more naturally. My seminary roommate was from Seoul, Korea, South Korea, and there's no word in their language for my. So even when someone is talking about their mother or they're talking about their house, it's always our mother and our house. That's how it translates in the language. So there's no possessive. So this notion that the community is the thing, or that the community is the light bringer or the light giver, I think is such a beautiful metaphor and understanding of even how we understand ourselves as Christians. I think in the U.S. that gets really kind of twisted in ways that are not helpful. Even as I was thinking about the Esther text last week, when she says, I have been called for such a time as this, or I have not been called to come into the king, where I landed is this notion that, no, you weren't called. Y'all were called, right? The community was called. It's the people praying and fasting that allow her to be able to say, if I perish, I perish. She couldn't do that by herself. So it's a beautiful sentiment or idea, I think, in the HarperCollins Bible, that it's the community that's bringing the light and giving the light.
Well, and especially that contrast to where we in this Americanized mindset tend to put everything into my, and that I have a 2-year-old, and that's currently his favorite word. My. He doesn't say I want it, or he says my want it. My that's his way of understanding possession. And or we export it and it becomes yours, and we just assume someone else will do it for us, and we put the burden on someone else to take care of this, or someone else will be responsible, which is what tends to happen when we transpose these texts to Jesus. Well, we'll just let Jesus be the servant and we can continue doing whatever we want, and it does. But when we kind of shift that to a we, a we are the ones that we've been waiting for kind of mindset. Well,
Right.
maybe we have a little bit of work to do, and the onus is now on us to do this task at hand and be that
Absolutely.
light.
Absolutely. And it is a little bit of work, I think, when you think of the communal nature of it. Because I think sometimes what paralyzes us and gets us stuck is this notion that I've got to do the thing. Um, or we put it off on Jesus. And J. Alfred Smith, who was my homiletics professor, said, we sit in the lazy rocking chair of religion, just looking at Jesus on the cross, waiting for him to save us. But when you think about the community, or you think about the best of the Reformed tradition that says we serve as ministers along with elders and deacons, and that in that three-part office Jesus is present, it takes so much pressure off to think I've got a community
Mm,
to help me do this hard thing or be this leader of the people. I am
yeah.
not leading alone.
The
Yes.
cloud of witnesses and the
Yes.
kingdom of priests. Yeah, that's
Yes.
so true.
It's so beautiful.
So talk to us about light. This passage has a whole lot. You know, where does it get in here? I've given you as a covenant to the people a light to the nations. Bring out prisoners from the dungeons. Prisoners who sit in darkness. So there's a whole lot going on here about being the light to the nations. Say a bit about light to the nations. What's going through your head when you think about that language specifically in this part of Isaiah?
I think there's a lot of suffering. I mean, in this part of the world and in this time, and I think even in our own time, there's a lot of suffering, humanitarian crises, natural disasters. And I think that God is calling the nation of Israel to be for the people, perhaps what the people themselves can't see, can't imagine. I mean, they have gone through generations of struggle and suffering. So even imagining light, I think, is a challenge. And so to send a nation that says, we know a God, and we would love to tell you about this God, or we would love to manifest this God in the way we engage you and interact with you, so that you maybe start to think, oh, something else is possible. Look at the way these folks are showing up in the world for us and with us. I think that's the call. So light makes things possible. Light. I read somewhere that we don't turn a light on and sit and look at the light. Right? The light allows us to do other things. It allows to cook. It allows us to bathe or to clean or to read a book. Um, Light also doesn't diminish. One commentator was saying the way heat does. You know, when you open a door and some light leaks out into the hallway, it's not like heat that starts to go away or diminish as you share it. And that's a beautiful notion that we
Yeah.
have a thing, that God has given us a thing that we can share and bring to others that doesn't diminish.
I like that. All of this is fascinating. I'd heard, I don't know who it's quoted from. I heard it from a guy named Pete Rollins, that light isn't a thing, but it's that which lets you see other things. And so,
Yeah.
what does it mean to be light? It's that same sentiment. But the way it doesn't diminish. I mean, even think about just scientifically, light is the baseline we understand in our universe. It's the speed limit,
It's this
and like the light doesn't stop. It just keeps on going. Like the star we see in the sky was burning billions of years ago. That light just keeps. So when we are light in the world, it's not like a fixed time. It's going to keep going. The light we do won't degrade or become a residual effect. It's I wish, okay, I wish you were preaching this sermon.
Now we
Oh, this
wish
is
we
so
were
good.
teaching this one. I think the other beauty of it not diminishing or stopping also ties us back to the community, because of course our light will go out at some point, but we are in community. So
Yes.
like our church, the Riverside Church, has been around for 92, 93 years. Fosdick is no longer here, and on and on, that great line of saints. Our spiritual ancestors are no longer here, but they're part of a community, and the community never stopped, and the community never will
Oh.
stop until the end of time. We just are one kind
Whew.
of torch handoff. You know, we're the Olympic torch handoff, but the light never goes out in the community.
Wow.
It's really good
That
stuff.
that that is some good stuff. Where it's not about any one of us. It can't be about any one of us. It has to be about the community, because light doesn't degrade. Light keeps going, and our individual selves will stop at some point,
Oh,
but the
yeah.
community will continue on. So long as we don't build the community all around one individual, which
Of course,
happens
we
all too
do
easily.
that. Oh my gosh, we do that all the time, that cult of personality. So we really have to center the community and what the community is about and what the community is doing. And the interesting thing is, I think Jesus, as the light of the world, was always doing that, was always getting ready to peace out, right? I know I'm not going to be here, so you guys better get ready because you're now going to do greater things. Um, but again, we focus on him, we focus on a pastor, a personality, Martin Luther King Jr. But no, those folks are limited. But the community's light is everlasting. Yeah.
Well, this is a really great text.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to find some churches who are preaching it so I can hear what they say. Since you're not gonna be one of them this week, but or if you're just bored and want to write a bonus sermon, why not? You know.
Right. Well, what I can say is this: our kids are doing the pageant, and I think there's a lot of light in that. That is a tradition at
Mm.
the Riverside Church that has stretched back before these kids were born and will stretch into the future. And they are our
Ooh.
light as well, aren't they? I mean, the joy and the humor and the beauty of young voices and young bodies telling the best story ever told. It's always a delightful
Yeah.
Sunday for me when young people preach in the ways that only they can preach. That's going to be light for the nation for years to come.
That's well said. Anyone from other churches watching this, you can borrow this for your sermons or Bible studies. But Riverside crew, if you're waiting for Reverend Thorne's Light to the Nation sermon, well, just enjoy the children's pageant because that is the embodiment of that light that will not degrade, that continues on. I love that. That this kind of pageant Sunday has been happening far before these particular kids were even born, and it will continue on generations to come. That's the beauty of these traditions and rituals and the community that is bigger than any one individual. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah,
So
that's the
good.
beauty of light.
Well, we've gone every corner in this episode, I think, from some good old Bible commentaries to a little bit of science to everything in between. So, everyone watching, listening, hope this has been helpful. If you have questions, drop them in a comment below. Get a hold of us however you'd like on social media. Show up on a Sunday, this coming Sunday, as Reverend Thorne said. The children will be leading the pageant as part of our worship service. And I think you have a few words that will be said around that as well. Isn't that right, Reverend Thorne? There's a little
Yes,
moment from you we
yes.
get. Yeah.
I will be doing the message for all ages, which is really going to celebrate the light that the children have brought us. I think there might be some cookies involved, you know. So if you're there and you're under a certain age, maybe 15, there'll be cookies. I think I'm baking them.
So that means you got to just come to church with a young person so you can take them to the front for the message for all ages and get the bonus cookie. That's the
That's right.
trick.
That's right.
All right. Well, more to come in this. We'll be back next week talking about more of these things. We're coming up to Christmas, so I think people know where the story might be headed, but then it's going to keep on going. I'm really excited for this narrative lectionary approach specifically because of the way we're going to see the story connecting week after week after week. And we'll do it again next week.